Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain. I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. For as I was my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasoda Nandana Prajajaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Vishva Paramahans Vavraji Gacharya Sadasi Sivadesi Matvadan Samshit Prabhupada Ki Jai Ramacharya Das Thakur Ki Jai Param Sigaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasdi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Mukunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Sri Ravandam Ki Jai Nabadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Jamuna Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Go Premanandi. All glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Gun Sri Gurung, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashnaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasdi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 13, verse 58. Tatorvak prati labdakshaha ka pareta vad uttita krichrad unmilya vidristir achastedam sahatmana tatorvak prati labdaksha ka pareta vad uttita krichrad unmilya vidristir achastedam sahatmana. Tata, then, arvak, externally. Pratilabdha aksha, having revived his consciousness. Ka, Lord Brahma, paretavat, just like a dead man. Utita, stood up. Krichrat, with great difficulty. Unmilya, opening up. Vai, indeed. Drishti, his eyes. Achashta, he saw. Idam, this universe. Saha atmana, along with himself. Translation: Lord Brahma's external consciousness then revived, and he stood up, just like a dead man coming back to life. Opening his eyes with great difficulty, he saw the universe along with himself. Purport: we actually do not die. At death, we are merely kept inert for some time, just as during sleep. At night, we sleep and all our activities stop. But as soon as we arise, our memory immediately returns, and we think, oh, where am I? What do I have to do? This is called supt uttita nyaya. Suppose we die. Die means that we become inert for some time, and then again begin our activities. This takes place life after life, according to our karma or activities, and svabhav or nature by association. Now, in the human life, if we prepare ourselves by beginning the activity of our spiritual life, we return to our real life and attain perfection. Otherwise, according to karma, svabhav, and prakriti, and so on, our varieties of life and activity continue, and so also do our birth and death. As explained by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Maya vasa jatsha beshe katsha habudubu bai. My dear brothers, why are you being washed away by the waves of Maya? One should come to the spiritual platform, and then one's activities will be permanent. Krita punya punja, this stage is attained after one accumulates the results of pious activities for many, many lives. Janma koti sukritarna labhyate. The Krishna consciousness movement wants to stop koti janma, repeated birth and death. In one birth, one should rectify everything and come to permanent life. This is Krishna consciousness. translation, Lord Brahma's external consciousness revived, just like a dead man coming back to life. Opening his eyes with great difficulty, he saw the universe along with himself. So this verse describes what happened after Brahma saw all of these cowherd boy forms turn into Vishnu forms. And then consequently, he became completely astonished by this. Suddenly, as the previous verse describes, everything was withdrawn and by the Lord's Yoga Maya potency, and then suddenly he didn't see them anymore. And then later it describes he saw Vrindavan as he saw before, and he saw Krishna standing there. So this verse describes that transition from seeing those forms of all the Vishnus, and then suddenly it all disappears, and he sees Vrindavan and he sees Krishna there. So it's like waking up from a dream, so to speak. As if you were under some sort of illusion. But we should also not think that what Krishna showed him was an illusion, because Krishna ultimately is the source of all Vishnu forms and all universes, etc. So we can take this as more or less like a revival or a transfer to a different type of consciousness. That's all, but not necessarily that it was false. When we wake up from a dream, then we understand, oh, the dream was false. And it's not the real world. So here he comes back to the world as it is, and he sees everything around him like a person waking up from a dream. Or in this case, it also talks about a person revived from the dead. Suddenly he's back in another body, and he sees everything around him. As if he had gone out of his body and come back. But actually, that didn't really happen. Krishna simply gave him this other vision, that he is the source of everything, and that he was also ultimately the source of all those calves and cowherd boys, who were actually himself. So he saw something very astonishing. And then he comes back to this seeing Krishna as he was before. So the transfer of his consciousness from one state to the other, where he saw the forms, and then he saw Vrindavan back as it was, as something like a dream or out-of-the-body experience or something. So, in that sense, it describes this his surprise at what he had just seen and how he had to recover himself after that. So with great difficulty he opened his eyes, and then he saw Idam, that's this universe, whatever was in front of him in Vrindavan, and he saw himself. So, in other words, he came back to his normal state where he could see everything around him in its normal form. Of course, as the next verses describe, it wasn't actually normal. He came back to the state where he saw Vrindavan just as he saw before. But at the same time, he understood its special nature. He understood it was something completely different from other places in the material world. Brahma had created the material world and the planetary systems, etc. And when he came to Vrindavan and he saw Krishna, then he thought, oh, this is only part of my creation. And therefore I can take part of this creation away and confuse Krishna. But now when he looks everywhere, he sees something completely different. This Vrindavan is not part of the material world at all. It's a very, very special place. It may look similar to the material world. But if you have the eyes, then you see it as something quite different. So that is the nature of realization. If we have spiritual realization, we develop spiritual eyes. And then when we look at something, we will see its spiritual nature rather than its material nature. So the same goes for Vrindavan. We go to the place called Vrindavan or Mayapur or any holy dham. It's actually a spiritual place, but if we have material eyes, we will see it as a material place. So we go to Vrindavan, we see the dust, and we see the pigs running around or whatever, or the sewer going down the drain. We say, oh, this is like a normal material place. And then we'll see the trees, and we'll think they're material trees and everything like that. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, in one sense, it's not really the Dham you're looking at. It's a covering. It's hidden. You're looking with material eyes, and there's a covering over the Dham, and you're looking at that covering, which is a material form. If you have spiritual eyes, then you will not see the covering, you will see the actual form of Vrindavan and the trees and the rivers, etc. So therefore, we cannot always trust our eyes, because our eyes have this material propensity to see material things. So the speciality of the Dhamma is that it actually is the spiritual world, but it's covered over in this way by our material eyes, so it looks material. So when we develop spiritual eyes, then we will actually see the real Vrindavan. However, there's a little concession. Even if we cannot really see the Dham right now, if we are devotional at least, then we get some effect from the Dham. So in the Nectar Devotion, it describes the 64 angas of bhakti, and 5 angas are considered most important. One of those angas is living in the holy Dham. It's part of our sadhana. Of course, it's always also there in perfection. People who are in bhava or prema also want to live in the holy Dham. So we see in the description of bhava that one of his characteristics is he lives in the Dham of the Lord. And we see someone like Gopakumar in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. After he got perfection, he had a spiritual body. Then he would sometimes be in the spiritual world, and sometimes he'd come into the material world and live in Vrindavan also. So again, it's non-different. So one is equal to the other. So he lives in Vrindavan and he sees Vrindavan there. So also for those doing sadhana, even if they don't have their spiritual eyes developed, then they can still take advantage of that place. And that's why it's one of the angas of bhakti. It gives benefit to us. So it is just like chanting the name of the Lord. Name is non-different from the Lord. And if we actually have pure spiritual consciousness when we chant, then we see the Lord, His form, His qualities, and His activities, just in the name. But we're doing sadhana, so we're not at that stage. So we cannot see the form of Krishna when we chant the holy name or His pastimes. But still we get effect. Some effect, spiritual effect is there. It's not the ultimate effect of seeing non-difference of Krishna in the name, but we get effect from it, spiritual effect from it, until we reach that stage where the name and the Lord are non-different. So similarly with living in the Dham, so we do not directly see the Dham, but nevertheless it is very advantageous for us to live in the Dham, just as advantageous for us to chant the holy name, even though we don't see Krishna in the name immediately. So it has its effect. And eventually by living in the Dham, then we actually will see the Dham also, and see Krishna there. So the Dham is part of our, living in the Dham is part of our sadhana, even though we don't have full spiritual eyes yet. So, now as I mentioned, Brahma was not really in Maya, in material Maya. It was covered by the Lord also. So this pastime could be performed. previously he had seen the Lord at the very beginning of his life. And it's described also that on Brahmaloka there's also a form of the Lord, thousand-headed form of the Lord. The Purusha form of the Lord is residing on his planet, and he accepts the offerings of Brahma and the devotees there. So Brahma also has spiritual eyes if he got the Lord there and he's worshiping him, etc. So we shouldn't think he's an ordinary living entity. Nevertheless, when he came to Vrindavan, then he thought, ordinary place, ordinary person here, this cowherd boy, though he's supposed to be Supreme Lord, doesn't look like it, because he's just running around with these cowherd boys. And so he didn't see with spiritual vision at that point. So that was not his fault. This was a trick of the Supreme Lord. His vision was lowered, and then again, at this case now, he's opening his eyes. He goes back and he can appreciate it very nicely. Much like in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna requested to see the universal form. And then Krishna says, well, you can't really see it, so I will give you the Divya Chaksu, heavenly eyes, to see that form. And then he saw that form. And then later on, it disappeared and he didn't see the form. He saw Krishna himself after that. So he gave him a special vision to see that universal form. So it's also explained that this was a lower vision, because the universal form is made out of matter. He saw the form with all the universe and the elements and the devatas and rakshasas and human beings and everything, material things within it. So it's a lower vision. So the Divya Chaksu that he got were actually the eyes of devatas who can see the material world. He gave him a lower vision to see something on a lower level. And then later on, he got the higher vision again, and he could see Krishna directly. So the Lord can do that. He can adjust our vision so that we have a lower vision or a higher vision. And just like Arjuna is not in any way materially contaminated, but he got this lower vision for a certain purpose. So Brahma also got a lower vision, and he saw the Vrindavan, but he didn't see its real spiritual nature, and he didn't see Krishna in his real spiritual form. He saw them as ordinary beings for a short period of time, by the will of the Lord. And then the Lord removed that, and again he was able to appreciate everything. So that is described in the following verses, where he sees Vrindavan and he understands its true nature. And then he sees Krishna, and he understands that form as well. So ultimately, Brahma, through this, got a revelation of the very special nature of Krishna, Vrindavan, and the people of Vrindavan. Not just that they're spiritual, but actually they have attained the highest level of spiritual existence beyond any other forms and other places. In other words, Vrindavan is the highest place, even though it's within the material world. It's higher than all the spiritual planets, like Vaikuntha even. So that was the type of realization that Brahma got, that the form of Krishna is the source of all the Vishnu forms who create all the universes. And at the same time, that form is deceptive, because it looks like a form of a small cowherd boy. And one does not expect a cowherd boy to be more powerful than Vishnu. But this is what he realized at this point. The form of Krishna is superior to all other forms of the Lord, including the Vishnu forms. So, that, of course, as I mentioned, also is the conclusion of the Bhagavatam. The initial proposition of Bhagavatam is to show how Krishna is Bhagavan Swayam. He is the ultimate form, highest form of all. So this, of course, will meet with opposition from many people, even from Vaishnavas, because we see even other Vaishnavas still today maintain Vishnu Supreme, Krishna is an avatar only. We'll commonly see that. So it's obviously, when we say Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, immediately there'll be protests from all people, Vaishnavas and other people as well. Whole purpose of Bhagavatam is to show that this statement is true. So here we get a living example of a person who realized this. Brahma, head of the universe, he realized it. He understood Krishna is superior to all the other forms. And Krishna is Bhagavan Swayam. And, of course, we will see in the 10th canto that this being supreme is ultimately because Krishna manifests all rasas in the most attractive way. And that is what the first part of the 10th canto up to about chapter 40 illustrate Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. They are more attractive than anything else. Of course, Dwarka and Mathura pastimes are also sweeter than other pastimes, but pastimes in Vrindavan are the ultimate sweet pastimes. So, by hearing these pastimes, a person is able to appreciate the attractive nature of Krishna. So, that is the whole purpose of Bhagavatam, to show that why Krishna is so special, why is Bhagavan Swayam. Due to the variety of jivas, however, some may not be attracted to that sweet nature of Krishna. They may be more attracted to the powerful nature of the Lord, and therefore they prefer to worship those forms, in spite of the fact that they read the Bhagavatam, or Bhagavatam says Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Still, they will prefer other forms. There's nothing wrong with that, if that's their preference. So, therefore, we don't insist that such people change. If they get their bliss from that particular form, then why should they change? Because it's another form of the Lord, and they have that particular bliss that they get from that. At the same time, when we objectively look at everything, then we can analyze, and we'll see that the amount of bliss is superior with Krishna. There's greater variety, greater intimacy, greater sweetness, etc. And the intensity of the bliss is much more. So in that sense, the jivas get more bliss through realization of Krishna than other forms. So it's advantageous for the jiva to worship Krishna and get that higher bliss. But, of course, if they prefer other forms of bliss, fine. It's okay. But at least the Bhagavatam is inviting everybody to partake of that bliss and attract everyone. And those that get attracted, fine. If they're attracted to other forms, okay, they can worship those forms also. So, the special nature of Krishna is revealed obviously through his form and his qualities. But these are all manifested nicely through his activities, his lila. Through his lila, then we understand his wonderful qualities. And his form is there within the pastime in a certain context. This is what creates the highest attraction. So therefore, listening to the pastimes of Krishna is a very powerful means of developing that attraction to the Lord, because through that we can appreciate Krishna's qualities and his form as well. So, therefore, hearing the Bhagavatam is considered to be one of the major activities. Shravanam is a main activity, but it's not just Shravanam, it's Shravanam of Bhagavatam. That's what it particularly mentions. It's not just hearing any scripture, hearing Bhagavatam, because this will give us the attraction for Krishna and understanding of his wonderful qualities, etc. Though kirtan of Krishna's name is the main process for us, we can't separate it from the other processes. And of course, it's called independent. So theoretically, yes, but obviously we cannot separate chanting from hearing and from devotee association. Obviously, we hear the holy name through devotees, so sadhu sangha is very important. And hearing, shravanam, through the devotees we also hear. And what do we hear? We hear Bhagavatam. Oh. So, the shravanam process and the kirtan process go together. Through hearing process, hearing Bhagavatam, we begin to appreciate the wonderful form and qualities and activities of Krishna. And thus, when we chant, the name is not an abstraction, it's not just a sound. We can understand who is Krishna and his pastimes, etc. So this will more quickly bring us to the stage where we realize Krishna and his name are non-different, and in his name we realize his form, qualities, and his activities. So it is, so we can say, an aid for us to realize Krishna and the name through hearing about his pastimes. So, therefore, the two things go together. Shravanam goes along with the kirtan process very nicely. So we hear the Bhagavatam and we chant the name of Krishna. And in this way, through the chanting process, then we will realize exactly what is in the Bhagavatam. That is a wonderful form of Krishna and his qualities and his activities manifested in the name. So, hearing from Bhagavatam helps us in that process and quickens the process for us. So, therefore, we never give up the Shravanam process, even though kirtan is the main process. Hearing or the chanting is the main process and independent in the sense that even without hearing Bhagavatam, you get some effect from chanting, as we see in the case of Ajamil chanted the name of Narayan, not thinking of Narayan at all. I was thinking of his son, but he got effect from that. So definitely you get effect from chanting. In that sense, it's independent. Yeah. But again, we don't get the ultimate effect from that type of namabhas. If we want real effect, then we have to have Sudanam. So Sudanam means we chant with knowledge. We understand who is Krishna, that he is not a devata, that he is Supreme Lord, and Supreme Lord is not just another form like Vishnu, he is actually a special form like that. So that's why we get the Shravanam as a process, to get that knowledge, and then we get Sudanam, and that we get prema. With the namabhas, we don't get prema. We can get destruction of karmas, sin, up to moksha, whatever, but don't get prema. So we need Sudanam, and for that we need the hearing process. So hearing is there, hearing Bhagavatam, and we get that through devotee association, through sadhu sangha and shravanam go along with the kirtan process. They support it very nicely. And, of course, then we have the other 5 elements there. We have living in the Dham. The Dham itself is a powerful influence, even if we cannot see the Dham directly when we don't have fully spiritual eyes. So in sadhana, it's also an important factor, the influence of the holy Dham. Jiva Goswami explains, well, everyone cannot live in the holy Dham due to their particular situation. But he says then the compensation for that is you can think of the Dham. At least you think of the Dham when you're chanting. So then that will make up for it. So in this way we have Brahma here. being educated. Yeah? Of course, his education in one sense is a pretense or something like that, an arrangement of the Supreme Lord, because he's already seen the Lord. He doesn't need to be educated in one sense. But it gives Brahma a whole understanding of the sweetness of Krishna through this pastime, and how that the sweetness of Krishna is superior to any other realization of Krishna. So this is the realization that Brahma gets. After all of this, Brahma he aspires for being a resident of Vrindavan, but he never does that. After this whole event, you see, he goes back to his abode. He doesn't say, well, I'm going to stay here in Vrindavan and serve Krishna. And he goes back to his abode. So he understands also that he's not even qualified. To be qualified, he needs to be exactly like the people of Vrindavan. Then he can live there. But in his particular body, he's not qualified. He doesn't have a cowherd form. He has a Brahma form, so he can't stay there. His mentality also is a little different because he's the creator of the universe, etc. So thus he aspires, definitely aspires to be a servant of the grass of Vrindavan. At the same time, he understands he actually cannot live there or participate directly at that particular point in time because of his particular body and his particular function in the universe. Yeah, but he appreciates the position of Vrindavan, the people of Vrindavan, and Krishna as being the ultimate form. So that's his realization through this pastime. Okay, any question? Yeah, the Dham is, we could say, a replica, because if we have associate Krishna there, then wherever Krishna is, his Dham is there. So if you can't live in the holy Dham, then you have a Krishna temple. It's also the same. Or in your house as well. You turn your house into Vaikuntha by having a temple there also. So this, of course, indicates how our environment also is a big influence on us. And then, unfortunately, of course, if we're not in the Dhamma, then we're in some other place, a material place. So that has a counter-influence on us. The whole material world is a counter-influence. So it's a negative influence. So therefore, it's more difficult to progress if we have a bad environment. And if we have a spiritual environment, then it's easier to progress. So therefore, going to the Dham, even though we cannot see it directly with our eyes, we don't have spiritual eyes, still, influence of the holy Dham is there. So then the second best is to have a temple, and wherever there's a temple, it's like a Dham, so therefore we get the influence of the temple on us. And this counteracts the material world around us. Yeah.
So desire to do something plays such a role. How can we apply this principle for service? We want to do some kind of services.
So we can't do what we think about it, Stan, you're saying? If we can't actually do what we think about it, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so we have the desire to do some services, but right now in our situation we may not be able to do it. So if we desire for it or wait for it, that situation to become favorable, but we are having that eagerness to do the service. So will that also have the same effect?
Well, in devotional service, we are anya abhalashita shunya, no other desire, but the desire that is favorable is the desire to please the Lord, to serve the Lord. So that desire itself is favorable for us, for our development. If we are constantly desiring in that way, that's to our advantage. If we don't do that, then we have the other desires, anya abhalasa. We got all other desires, material desires in its place. So if it's related to the Lord, then very good. Any such desire is beneficial for us. It replaces the material desires.
So desire for pleasing the Lord may be there, but actively we may not be able to do something. So because
So we can desire to please the Lord in a certain way. So that's always it's better than desiring to do something in the material world. So the more we can funnel all of our desires towards Krishna, whether we can realize it at the moment or not, doesn't really matter. But as long as those desires are focused on the Supreme Lord, then it's always beneficial for us. It's a positive engagement for our mind to do so. It's one of the principal angas of bhakti, but at the same time, we see that bhakti can be practiced in any place, at any time, so it's a very flexible process, in particular chanting the holy name. So even if we don't live there, then still we can get to perfection by executing our bhakti with the proper attitude and by chanting the holy name. So it doesn't depend on that, but it's one of the favorable items, that's all. So if we can find it, we can, then we adjust things and still we can get to perfection. So we have example of Haridas Thakur. He never went to Vrindavan. He just chanted wherever he was, and he got his perfection that way. So at the same time, then we see the Goswamis. They lived in Vrindavan. Lord Chaitanya didn't. He stayed in Puri, which is another dham, of course, but he stayed there. So circumstances may prevent us for certain reasons, but still, if we follow the process of bhakti properly, then we can still get perfection.
You mentioned earlier devotees are affected to different forms, like Krishna and other forms. All the forms are worshipping in different forms, equal chance of going back to God, or is it Krishna which makes that sense, or is it a different takes different amount, or is it the same for 15 or 14 years?
What different chance of going to the Lord? Well, in one sense it's equal. At the same time, we say Krishna is very merciful, in terms of compassion more than the other forms, and even Lord Chaitanya is even more merciful. They're also very special, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Krishna, in terms of their mercy. So we see, for instance, Krishna delivers Putana and other demons. And even though they're demons, they end up in the spiritual world, which no other form of the Lord does. So in that sense, he does have more mercy. That, of course, is extraordinary mercy, and not everybody can expect that. So yes, he does have some special mercy also, along with his other qualities. One is special mercy. Mm.
So, in different phases of life, we can do these activities to limited degree. And when, especially in the Gresta life, when you go to the one person, then you can give more time.
Mm-hmm.
So the challenge is always there that you may not even reach the one person stage, and you may encounter death.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that case, how do we take that death as a mercy of Krishna? Because in our situation, again, fulfilling our commitments is also part of surrender to the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So how much will that be taken into consideration, and how will achieve perfection in case we...
Well, we can always continue next lifetime. So that's always there for everybody. However far they get, then they continue in their next lifetime and next lifetime until they get perfection. So yeah. That's the guarantee of the Lord, that bhakti is never destroyed.
In the end, is the destination different from Goloka Vrindavan or
Well, it's a little bit of a different mood. It's kind of a cross between Dwarka and Vrindavan. So in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, there's a special Jagannath place which is separate from Goloka and separate from Dwarka, but it's considered quite elevated also. So if one worships Jagannath, solely Jagannath as a devotee, then one would go there. Yeah.
Excuse me, I shared with friends of this time here a very special kirtan from Vrindavan,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I thought it was very holy.
Mm-hmm. Holy. Uh-huh.
Actually, Prabhu, I'm going later today to the Paramasala Festival. I'm hoping to spread Krishna consciousness with people out at the Paramasala Festival.
Oh, I see. They're having a festival today?
They usually have once in a year
Mhm.
festival.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's today though?
Yeah, it's sort of the same.
Oh, I see. I thought you should put it on the weekend or something. Okay. Anyway, good. They have a holy festival then, or what?
Yeah, I think it's possible.
Oh, okay. The Gaur Purnima is actually the holy, yeah. Okay. Question?
So, as we discussed that we may worship different forms, we may go to different part of the spiritual world.
Yeah.
But our essential duty remains the same wherever we are. Maybe this portion of that question. Meaning saving.
Well, it's all bhakti, and then we ultimately end up with prema, and we have eternal bliss. Only the intensity of the bliss may be different in different places. That's all in the spiritual world. Yeah. So, Vaikuntha is the general bliss, and we get more intimate bliss like Ramchandra. It's a little bit higher. And then if you get Krishna in Dwarka, it's higher than that. And if you get Krishna in Vrindavan or Goloka, then it's even higher. the amount of bliss. But some people don't prefer that. They prefer to worship Rama, like Hanuman. Even you tell him, okay, Krishna's there in Vrindavan, you won't go there. He'll stay with Rama and worship Rama instead. So depending on the individual, then they get a particular attraction to that particular form, and they stick with that form.
Excuse me, I was going to ask a question. How do you talk to Christian people and like I've heard I
yeah.
So how do you share the other way? You know, like I'm still have Christian friends.
Yeah, yeah. And how do you communicate with them?
I'm
Yeah.
just wondering how I talk to them about Krishna.
Well, I think you have to be very gradual. And first of all, of course, there are different types of Christians, and and even within one group of Christians, their mentality may be quite different from another person. You know, so it depends on how stuck they are in their own ideas, and how fanatical they are. You know. So if they're very fanatical, it may not be easy at all. Best is not to preach to them and give them prasadam or something, just indirectly. Even associating with them as a devotee is good for them, if they don't even know it. That's good for them also. So, yeah. Yeah. Simply by being there, you kind of slightly alter their consciousness a little bit. So,
Actually, Prabhu, I shared about, you know, about our mortal bodies
uh-huh.
at a funeral, at friend's
Yeah,
funeral.
yeah.
In fact, I've now actually lost three people in the last 2 months
Uh-huh, yeah.
that had mental ill health.
Mm-hmm.
And I shared at this funeral, a bit of that. And then I actually thanked people because I know that there would be people there who wouldn't, wouldn't understand.
Yeah. So, of course, we can talk to some people because there is some common grounds, obviously, between Christianity and us, because we have a concept of one God, for instance. That's a common thing. And then we have a concept of compassion of God. God's all merciful. We also have the idea of chanting God's name, so that's also there. The Christians do that also. So there are some common factors also. They may not be aware of that even, because think Hinduism is all pagans and they worship many forms and this and that. But we can also just communicate, oh no, it doesn't mean that. There's one God and He's all loving and He has compassion and we chant His name. We try to become peaceful and compassionate to other living entities. So then they may appreciate that also.
That's the thing I really love about Krishna actually is compassion.
Yeah. So we can may talk about the common things that we have with them, and then they can somewhat relate to that.
Thank you for taking our wonderful class. Maharaj, this saint from South India, Annamacharya, is considered to be the Nandaka, the sword of Lord Vishnu. And he has written so many beautiful kirtanas glorifying Lord Venkateshwara.
Okay.
There is one song in which Brahma glorifies the lotus feet of Krishna. Are those bona fide songs which we can sing?
Well, I guess because they are Vaishnavic songs, they're probably good, and they're glorifying the Lord, and they understand the Lord is supreme, He's not a Devata, etc. So in that sense, they're good. Of course, another sense, it's not the ultimate because they have the Krishna and Vrindavan and Swami Bhagavan and Madhurya Rasa. They're not so much into that. Ultimately, they get maybe Andal, and is that the type of Madhurya Rasa is there. So it's a little different, but at least the respect for the Supreme Lord is there, and the respect for Krishna is there, so nothing wrong with that. And, just like Prabhupada also, he would quote King Kulashekhar's prayer is also all of our prayer, it's like that. And we do quote the all of ours or other things. What is that? Other prayers, King Kulashekhar's prayers. There's a few things that are quoted also by other Mayar Goswamis of the, followers of Ramanuja. So in that sense, they're not contradictory. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Maharaj,